Now, because Prahlad was so pious and academic and spiritual, he starts leading the demons in a positive direction. Prahlad is able to make the demons overcome their natural bestial instincts and focus their mind on devotion and like productivity, becoming good people, and basically live happily and be prosperous essentially, engage in economic activities, have families. Maybe, I guess that's all part of it, right? So the demon empire started doing really well. It became a prosperous place, and eventually Prahlad's rule extended to earth, to the human world, to the overworld. And he basically ushered in a golden age of peace and prosperity. The people of earth were satisfied, happy, virtuous. Now the gods were also kind of fans of Prahlad because they saw that he was such a great leader, and Indra, the king of the gods, starts getting insecure. Now Indra, you see, started getting annoyed, and so Indra, and there was pressure on Indra to give up the throne of heaven to him, so he did so. And Prahlad didn't even go to war or anything. Prahlad ended up becoming the unquestioned leader of the three worlds. Prahlad did a lot of this under his master, the planet Venus, that is Shukra. She is the master, the guru of the asuras, whereas the planet Jupiter or Brihaspati is the master and the guru of the gods. So Prahlad used to basically listen to his teacher, that is Shukra or Venus, and he used to listen to her advice and basically rule as a great king. Indra goes to Brihaspati, that is Jupiter, and says, "Oh, it's been awful. I've lost my kingdom. He's so powerful. He's so much more in control. Inferiority complex." And Brihaspati, of course, wants to help him. Brihaspati is basically like Master Yoda, right? He's just like this old guy who sits there and chuckles by himself and teaches people interesting lessons with me weird ass methods. And Brihaspati, of course, tells him, "I have taught you everything that I can, and of course, if you want to learn more, you need to go to their teacher. You need to go to the teacher of the asuras." So now Indra swallows his ego and goes to Shukracharya, that is Venus, and he asks her, "So tell me, I want to get my kingdom back, and I want to be like Prahlad. What should I do? What is it that he has that I don't? Why do people love him?" So they're still on opposing sides. But Indra is still gone to Shukra, so she's kind of happy, and she's like, "Well, if you really want to know what it is about him that everyone loves, it is the fact that he is a virtuous king." Indra asks, "What do you mean by virtue? What kind of virtue does he have?" And Shukracharya tells him, "Why don't you go ask him?" Now, Indra, of course, is not a big fan of the idea of going and asking his enemy directly why he is better than him. I mean, nobody would. He's not a cuck, is he? So he disguises himself as a sage. He goes to Amarvati, which at the time is Prahlad's capital on earth. And Prahlad is, of course, busy being the king of the three worlds, the entire universe, essentially. And Indra tells him, Indra comes there as a sage, and of course, in Hinduism, sages are usually venerated. So, of course, Prahlad receives him with respect and asks him why he has come to his kingdom. And the sage, that is Indra, tells him, "I have heard that you are a great king, and I want to learn from you. I want to learn about how you do things and all that." And Prahlad tells him, "I don't really have time to teach you statesmanship and my virtue and all that." But the Indra insists. He's like, "No, no, I must learn. Let me just stay with you and learn from you and be your disciple. Let me just observe you." And Prahlad's happy. He's like, "Okay, fine, you can." And so basically, Indra stays with Prahlad and gains his trust. And then he stays there for a few years. And then finally, Prahlad tells him, "You're a great disciple. You've seen me. You've been with me. You've helped me out. I'm going to tell you why it is that I am a great king." Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into what he exactly tells him because I don't want to turn this into a religious lesson. It's basically a speech about what makes a good king. It ultimately comes down to like the basic aim of spirituality, which is usually said to be like reject the ego, overcome the lower self, embrace the higher self, right? That's in the most secular way I could explain to anyone. That's Jungian psychology. That's basically what Prahlad tells him, that I don't have an ego, I've embraced the self, and that's why I'm so virtuous. Indra finally fucking understands. He understands that the reason Prahlad is so great is because he is spiritual. He is in touch with himself, and Indra is in touch with the ego. So then Indra decides when Indra is going to leave. Prahlad says, I am very happy with you, you old sage, so I shall grant you a boon. I'm sure you've seen by, I'm sure you could see by now. In Hinduism, there's this trend of people granting each other boons, even though it's obviously going to come back to bite them in the ass. So Prahlad grants him a boon, and Indra says, okay, here's what I want. I want your character. Prahlad's, of course, shocked. He's like, what do you mean you want my character? He's like, I want your spirituality, basically. And of course, this is again a complicated story which goes into the religious theology and all that. I don't want to get into it. Prahlad, of course, is forced to grant this. And Indra gains spiritual enlightenment, just like Prahlad. Prahlad, this basically drains Prahlad. I guess you could think of it as he basically loses his life force, a fair chunk of his life force to Indra. And he becomes weakened, and Indra is able to take him over and reclaim heaven and the earth. And Prahlad's, and I think to a great extent, Prahlad even loses control of most of the netherworld, and he's forced to retreat. And of course, this life force takes some time to regenerate. But and then Prahlad's like he doesn't really know what to do. He's devastated. But then he basically hears Vishnu's voice in like some mystical trance, and Vishnu tells him, "You've done as much as you had to. You don't have to do any more. You can just rest easy now." Prahlad decides, you know what? Okay, fine. I've done as much as I could, and now I don't need to do any more. Now Prahlad also had kids, right? Prahlad had a son, Virochana, and a grandson, and the grandson's important. Grandson's called Bali. Um, Now Prahlad finds out at this point that his blind and deformed cousin Andhakasura, which literally means blind demon, by the way, Andhakasura has again gained a boon from Lord Brahma, who it seems at this point loves going around giving boons to demons. That's always going to be terrible for the gods. He basically, it seems, he finds the worst demons possible and he gives them boons, and then they go and challenge the gods. He basically finds out that Andhakasura has overcome these deformities and become invincible, thanks to Lord Brahma, of course. And so he says, okay, fine, Andhaka, you can be the king of the demons from now on. Now, of course, this doesn't work. You see, Andhaka, because you see, the demons are pretty angry that Indra tricked their king Prahlad into giving up control of the three worlds. So, under Andhaka, they go to war against the gods. Prahlad advises them against this, by the way. For blood, Andhaka is basically a malevolent, dark, completely insane demon, and so he decides to attack Mount Kailash where all the gods live. And naturally, Bali, Virochana, and Prahlad end up fighting for him because they are his generals. And of course, the invasion fails. Andhaka is killed by Lord Shiva, and Prahlad once again becomes king of the demons. But this time, Prahlad is also angry. So now that Prahlad is the king, he personally decides to go to war against the gods, and he fights and defeats Indra in battle, and he almost takes over heaven. But Indra goes to ask Lord Vishnu for help, and Vishnu says, "Okay, you have my help, you have my strength. Go fight." So of course Indra returns, and Prahlad and Indra start fighting, and Indra basically defeats Prahlad. And when Prahlad realizes that that Indra is the favor of Lord Vishnu, of course Prahlad is devoted to Lord Vishnu, so he decides to retreat. But now he decides to leave the kingdom in the hands of his son Virochana. Now Virochana, of course, is an entirely different set of myths and stories involving him, which we are not going to get into. And Prahlad basically becomes an old man. He retreats to his own abode. Eventually, Virochana also ends up getting killed by the gods, and now Bali becomes king of the demons. Now Bali is arrogant as hell. Bali is very, very proud and very, very strong. And Bali decides to perform a bunch of rituals. I think to gain a bunch of powerful Brahmastras, which are like nuclear bombs, and invincible armor, and a strong, powerful chariot of war or something. And of course, the gods start getting scared again. You can see the demons seem to constantly have an interest in invading heaven, so you can see why the gods are kind of always on edge. So once again they go to Lord Vishnu and they're like, this guy is performing these rituals and he's becoming extremely powerful. Please help us. So Vishnu's like, okay, and then so this is when he takes on a new avatar. This avatar is called Vamana, and Vamana is a Brahmin. Now, I'm not going to go into what a Brahmin is because that would involve going into the caste system, but he's basically a priest. Like he's the priestly class, and anybody who is a member of the priestly class back in ancient India was considered to be important. Priests were considered important, just like in any other religion. Interesting thing about Vamana is that he's a dwarf. So he's this little dwarf who shows up to Bali's palace. Now, Bali, of course, being also good and pious. Bear in mind, in Hinduism, being pious doesn't necessarily mean venerating the gods. Venerating the gods, you can do that, you can't do that, it's up to you. Demons, of course, didn't normally venerate the gods, but they were still pious. Being pious basically just means being spiritual. So, and of course, venerating the tenets of the religion, one of which is if a priest comes to your home, you serve him. So, Bali basically says, oh, it's a little Brahmin, it's a little dwarf Brahmin that's come. Let us treat him. Let's treat him well. So he takes him in, gives him food, washes his feet or something like that, and then of course he says, and now he's of course arrogant as hell. So he says, because I'm this great and mighty king who has so much, I am ready to grant you anything that you want as a show of my own benevolence. Because Vamana is of course the Vishnu in disguise, and he's like, oh, are you sure you're ready to give me whatever I want? He's like, yeah, ask for anything. So Vamana says, okay, I want land. And he's like, okay, how much land do you want? It's like, enough land that can be covered in 3 steps. Now, Bali is of course surprised. First of all, this guy's a dwarf, and secondly, even if he wasn't a dwarf, 3 footsteps of land is very little. Oh, are you sure you want just that much land that you can cover in three footsteps? And Vamana's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, I mean, I could have given you so many other things, but if that's what you want, you shall have it. And Vamana says, okay, you've promised me something and now you can't go back on your word, because then you'll be a bad person. And Vamana starts growing in size. He's a dwarf, but he starts growing in size and he becomes so massive, the entire world is basically at his feet. And he takes his first step, and that one step, the entirety of the world is covered. Then he takes a second step, and in the second step, the entirety of heaven and hell is covered. And then he's like, and then he looks at Bali. He looks down at him and he's like, "You're breaking your vow. You said that I could have as much land as I could cover in 3 footsteps. I've taken 2 footsteps, and I've basically conquered all of the land that you own. Where am I supposed to take the 3rd footstep?" And Bali's, of course, first of all, he's awestruck. He's shocked. He's realized how stupid he was. But just to show he's pious and a man of his word, and he says, "Oh Lord, I have realized who you truly are, and of course I made a mistake. You may take the 3rd step on my head. This will not only fulfill my vow, but also be my punishment for being unable to technically fulfill the vow. I couldn't give you the land that I promised you, so you may step on my head and take my life." Vamana's like, "Well, so be it." And Vamana basically raises his leg and starts slowly crushing him. And at this point, Prahalad, the grandfather, appears. And he tells Vishnu, oh Lord, don't do this, please. My grandson, he's just arrogant. He's just a little foolish. But do you not see, despite being arrogant and foolish, he is a man of his word. He is pious, he is moral, he doesn't break his promises. He just needs a little bit of humility, and you have taught it to him. And Vishnu realizes this as well, and of course Prahalad is Vishnu's long-lasting devotee. So Vishnu, of course, when Prahalad says it, Vishnu listens. And he's like, okay, since you have been humbled before me today, you shall now be known as Mahabali. Mahabali is also a god, by the way. Within Hinduism, he's considered to be a deity and not a demon. A benevolent asura, if you will. And he says, from now on, you will be Mahabali. Because you have been humbled before me, and because you're a man of your word, and I'm very impressed with you, I am going to give you a certain part of heaven. I don't remember which part of heaven this completely is. There's a name, like in Hinduism, there's different spheres of heavens, and there's a particular name for this part of heaven. And he says that you shall rule this part of heaven for an entire cycle of creation. And then he suggests that Prahalad and this guy and Bali retreat to the sphere of heaven, and they do, and they do, and that's about the end. Now, and eventually, at the end of his life, Prahlad dies. Prahlad at some point got old after hundreds of thousands of years, and then he died. And because he was so pious, he attained nirvana, as in he became one with the divine, which is like the ultimate aim of people in Hinduism. And yeah, that's the story of Prahlad. I just wanted to say it because it's a very odd story. You don't normally the relationship between demons and gods and all that stuff in Hinduism is quite interesting. I think I always liked it because it's a little bit. The reason I'm saying it because people might be interested in it is it's a little different from what you would normally hear in Judaism and Christianity, where demons are very different. I think it's only Islam where they say that you can actually convert demons to Islam. Other than that, there's no religion which makes demons so personal and informal, these kinds of stories and folk legends. But yeah, that's it. That's about it. If you like this video, please subscribe for more videos like this. I'll try to now make them as often as possible, and leave a like and a comment. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.